Soulcalibur's artists have stated that they usually start with a weapon they want to include in the game, and then design a character who would use said weapon. For the katana, they made a samurai. For the rapier, they made a nobleman. For the katar, they made a blind, half-naked contortionist. I'll be honest, I don't know what they were thinking with that one. However, there are only so many variations of pointy thing on a stick you can include before it starts to get stale. I mean, we've had 8 characters with a short sword and shield, or 10 if you want to count the generic lizard man and goth Pyrrha separately. Thus, over time, the series has shifted away from historical archetypes and towards fantasy. That brings us to the most recent installment, Soulcalibur VI, where the newcomers are an edgy anime boy with a Darth Maul sword and a mad scientist with magic crystal summoning gloves.
This is no mere glove.
Yeah, whatever. So how successful was this change in direction for the series' character design? That's what I'm here to answer. Good morrow everyone, Silvershire here, and welcome back to Palette Swap, where I'm going to discuss all 8 Grøh and Azwel costumes and then rank them from worst to best. Wait, really? There's only 8? And 6 of them are recolors? Well, this is probably going to be a short episode. On the bright side, maybe that means there won't be half a year between uploads this time. But first, who are Grøh and Azwel? Grøh and Azwel were both members of the Azwel organization, a secret order founded by King Arthur to hunt down the monstrous Malfested. While Grøh was dedicated to the cause, Azwel had ulterior motives. He saw himself as humanity's savior, and he had a plan to trigger a cataclysm known as the Ultimate Seed, which would rid the world of Malfested along with any humans too weak to withstand its power, i.e. most of them. He merely worked with Grøh and the rest of the Azwel organization so that he could conduct research on the Malfested. After a mission gone awry in which Grøh nearly lost his life, he awoke in Azwel's care. To his horror, he discovered that he had been turned into a Malfested and that a special gauntlet was the only thing keeping his evil power in check. Grøh tried to carry on business as usual for a while, but one story mode later, Azwel turned his best friend into a Malfested and forced them to fight to the death. Considering his research complete, Azwel officially left the Azwel organization, and Grøh took it upon himself to stop Azwel's scheme by any means necessary, even if it meant tapping into his Malfested power and becoming the very thing he despised. And then he teams up with your OC to go on a bunch of wacky adventures. For the most part, Grøh is wearing the standard Azwel organization uniform, which is a simple grey and black outfit with a bit of armor and some fur lining. On his shoulder, you can see the Azwel organization's crest, which consists of 3 swords behind a lion wearing a crown. King Arthur specifically is not usually associated with lions. That's more so the domain of Sir Owain, a different knight of the Round Table. But in general, lions are a symbol of the English monarchy, so it's not too out there that Arthur would use one for his organization. Grøh also has this weird glowy eye patch thing, which members of the Azwel organization use to scan for Malfested. You know what, I'm already getting real sick of saying Azwel organization, so I'm just gonna call them the AO from now on. The 2 main things setting Grøh apart from the other AO members are his mop of multicolored hair and the big purple gauntlet that Azwel gave him. When he soul charges, his gauntlet and eye patch explode, and the purple parts of his hair turn red, signaling his malfestation. When Grøh was first announced, I felt like his design didn't really match his character. He seemed more like a rebellious teen punk than this super serious, no-nonsense agent type. But now that I know Grøh better, I think that was intentional. As much as he tries to hide it, Grøh is kind of a dork, and I mean that affectionately. He uses a replica of the sword used by his favorite knight of the Round Table.
We all got favorite knights of the Round Table, right?
If it's not Lancelot, you're a nerd.
He shouts out the names of his attacks like an anime protagonist, and he's a lot more emotional than he lets on. All this is to say, I get the sense that Grøh is trying really hard to put on a serious persona because he feels like he needs to, even though that's not truly his personality. I'm probably thinking too hard about this, but he only has 4 costumes and I have to fill out the runtime somehow. I do have a couple other criticisms of his design. For one, his outfit doesn't look super medieval. The form-fitting shirt and all the badges and belts seem to be based on modern military gear, and even his glowy eye patch thing is more sci-fi than fantasy. These 2 pieces of concept art give him more historical tunics, and I don't think either of them are perfect, but they're closer to what I would have liked to see. Also, while we're on the subject of concept art, thank God they didn't go with Discount Nightwing over here. Back to the actual design, I think his palette could be improved. It's all dark grays and purples with only his white hair to stand out. Even his gauntlet, which should be weird and attention-grabbing, sort of blends in. I went into creation mode and did a quick edit to lighten up the fur and make his gauntlet the same gold as Azwel's, and I think those are improvements. Overall, Grøh's design isn't one of my favorites, but I do like it, and I've come to appreciate it more over time. I guess you could say it grew on me? That pun doesn't really work in past tense, does it? Grøh's color 2 is white and gold, which is the opposite of his default, though he still has a few black and dark gray accents on his coat. This is a much more heroic looking palette, which is fitting for someone who's trying to carry on the tradition of the Knights of the Round Table. It also has more value contrast than his default. If I remove the saturation from both of these, you can see how much more his color 2 pops out. Color 3 is black and red, so he's definitely not beating the Darth Maul allegations. They avoided making his hair red, which was a smart move because otherwise his soul charge form wouldn't be as unique. I'm always a sucker for red costumes, but this feels a little, I don't know, try-hard? It reminds me of the edgelord characters that people tend to make when they hop into creation mode for the first time. Lastly, color 4 is green and brown. This one is unique in a few ways. It removes his glowy eye patch thingy, darkens his skin tone, and makes his hair a solid color. The grounded, natural tones are a nice change of pace from his other costumes. I'm not a fan of the green fur though. I would prefer a color that occurs in the wild, like brown, tan, or gray. From worst to best, I would say it goes color 4, color 1, color 3, color 2, but they're all on roughly the same level. Color 4 isn't bad by any means, it's just my personal least favorite of the bunch. Azwel's design clearly takes after classic fantasy sorcerers, which is neat because Soulcalibur hasn't really had anything like that previously, except maybe Zoslamel. There's a lot going on, but I don't find it too busy, because there are some plain areas to give your eyes a break from the detail, like his sleeves. Plus, it suits his chaotic and theatrical personality. You don't hire Taliesin Jaffe of all people to voice your character if you don't want him to be a little extra. He has a bunch of neat stuff on his belt, including a skull, various pouches, some crystals that look like they might be pieces of Soulcalibur, a knife, and a book. Everything he needs for his Malfested research. I do think the gold tassels are a bit much, especially the ones on his upper body since they don't really make sense physically. They're just floating there, and it's really distracting once you notice it. I also think he should look more human. He has grey skin and yellow eyes, which are usually signs of malfestation. I'm sure that was on purpose to show that he's becoming what he hates, much like Groh, except the story never does anything with that. He looks like this even while he's still an AO member, and no one questions it, which is odd. Too bad Patroclus wasn't part of the AO, because he would have shut Azwel down in a heartbeat. As for his color palette, I appreciate that they kept it subtle yet with strong contrast. His outfit is mostly dark gray with lots of gold accents and the occasional pop of red and blue, representing Soul Edge and Soulcalibur respectively. When he soul charges, his shirt comes off, his hair goes wild, the marks across his body start to glow, and most significantly, he gets big crystals all over his arms and shoulders. It looks cool, but I think it's weird that Azwel is so jacked. Would have been more interesting and more reflective of his character if he was this frail scientist using magic gauntlets to compensate for a lack of physical strength. Much like Groh, his design is good, but it could be better. A few years ago, Yoshinori Takahashi shared this artwork of a younger Azwel. It's a rough sketch, so it's hard to make out the details of his outfit, but I think I prefer everything about it other than his hair. It has a slimmer silhouette, it's missing the floating tassels, and the stark white coloration is fitting for someone with a messiah complex. It would have been super cool if Azwel had a few different character models that he went through in story mode, showing his transformation from an ordinary scientist into a dark god, but that probably wasn't in the budget. Azwel's color 2 makes his robe white, his tassels half red half blue, and his hair blonde. This obviously plays up the duality between Soul Edge and Soulcalibur. I'm surprised that neither his default nor any of his other alternate colors go with half and half palettes like this. The main thing holding it back is that blonde hair just does not work on Azwel in my opinion. I think it's because his skin is so pale that you lose that contrast on his face. Color 3 makes his robe yellow, his tassels lavender, and his hair white. This is a strange palette. It looks too cheery for Azwel. He also keeps some of his red and blue accent, so it's quite a busy color scheme. And once again, the light hair doesn't contrast his skin very well. Lastly, color 4 makes his entire outfit white and gold. It also gives him dark brown hair and a more natural skin tone. This makes Azwel look like the holy figure he imagines himself to be. From worst to best, I would say it goes color 3, color 2, color 1, color 4. It's funny that the white and gold options won out for both Groh and Azwel, because it's not like I especially love that color combination. I just happen to think that those are the best palettes on offer for both of them. There wasn't a whole lot to discuss this episode, but I think I did as well as I could. Get it? As well as I could. Anyway, let me know what you think of Groh and Azwel's costumes, and until next time, I bid thee farewell.